The first thing I want to show is that I'm going to go to the AGRIS customer documentation off of a Google search here, but there's two ways you can get to the list of what's new. This is the first way by going to AGRIS customer documentation and then pick the product AGRIS. And then you can see the version, or I could have done it actually on that previous screen. It was right there. I could go to what's new over here and see what's new in AGRIS. And here's 21.1. And that was actually on that first screen too that I went to. And so they will list all the different packages and all the what's new in 21.1. The other way that you can get to this information, let me close this, and just within AGRIS itself, you can go to help, what's new, and click on any package. It doesn't matter which one it is. And it will show that everything after 10.2 is all available as what's new on our Confluence internet page. So you can click here and go to the same place. So it takes me right to the what's new, and I can then go into 21.1. So today I'm going to go down the list of all the items that's not grain or one-way related. Last week I went through a demonstration of all the commodity things and system support. I will repeat the system support items in this session as well, because there's a couple of good things to show in there. And, I might jump, let me just go ahead and jump into those right away. So I'm going to go to system support. And there's two main items that we've enhanced for 21.1. The first one is reports are added the ability to select on a user by user basis your favorite reports throughout the system. If I go over to AGRIS, I can demonstrate this. Let me close this. So throughout all of the packages, every one of the packages that we have report writers where you have multiple standard or user-defined reports, we have the ability for you to choose which one are your favorite reports. So you might have hundreds of reports, but you as an individual user might only use 10, 20 of them in your weekly processes that you do, and you can mark those as your favorite reports. So if I go into any one of these, but this is going to be the same for any of them, I go into AP balance reports, and I go to print standard reports. Let me uncheck these for a second so I can show you how this works. If I go into print standard reports, these are all the standard reports and AP balance reports. And what you have now is a new favorites button down at the bottom. So if you click favorites, it'll allow you to pick and choose what your favorite reports are, which is I had 3 of my reports set as my favorite reports, whether they're output reports or output to a spreadsheet, but you can say which ones are your favorite ones. You save that. Now, every time I come back in, when I come back to AP balance reports for my standard reports or my user-defined reports, I immediately get my list of my favorites. And you can tell right away at the top of the screen that this is my list of favorites. Because it says the word favorite up here. But I can always get to the remaining list as well. I can click on reports to get all of the reports or all of the spreadsheets, or I can go back to my favorites. And I can at any time uncheck or check different favorites and save that, and I have my list of favorites. So like I said, this is the same on any report writer. It's in whether you're in standard reports or your user-defined reports. You can set your favorites, and that's on a user by user basis. The next thing to show on the overall system is some enhancements in spooled reports, having to do with being able to select multiple spooled reports to print. So at the end of a lot of our customers, if I go into spool reports, a lot of our customers on a daily basis at night, they run a series of report streams to print a bunch of reports out at the end of the day. And they're available in spooled reports first thing in the morning when everybody comes in. And we have 2 pretty big enhancements in here having to do with those reports. First one has to do with If you wanted to come in and print, you have 3 or 4 reports that you print each morning or at any time, you can now use the multiple button. Or let me back up. We always had this option to select all and print or delete all, but now we have a multiple button so that you can pick and choose which reports you want to print. So you can select individual reports and then click print or delete those individual reports instead of having to print them one at a time. So I've chosen 4 reports, and then I can print 4 reports, yes. And then I can choose my printer or pick any printer on the network and print those 4 reports. And then when I get done printing those 4 reports, I could delete those 4 reports or not. So that's the first enhancement. The second enhancement is having to do with, so we have some customers who have lots of reports that's separated by location, and they might have the actual location code at the beginning of the report name. So here's some examples here where ABC all the way down, and BGH, those are like a simulation of different locations. So if you have your reports set up that different locations have different reports, and the location code is anywhere in the description of the report, then we have additional filters here now. So you can click the filter button and type in your location, and then you get all the reports just for your specific location. Or you can use that for any reason. If you want to click filter and say, I want any reports happen to have them with the word contract contained in, any report in the spool with the word contract contained in the title of the report. So the filter button now has 2 new fields. You can filter by this column, the description column, or the identifier column. So this identifier and this description, to be able to do a starts with or a contained in, are 2 new filters for the spooled reports. And so then even when you filter it down, so I found all these reports that have the word contract in it, but I could still click the multiple and then choose to print 2 or 3 of those reports and then print those reports out, just those individual 3 reports. So that's the 2 enhancements in system support. So let me go to the top of the list and go down, starting with accounts payable. Some of these enhancements I'll be talking about, and some of them I will demonstrate. Because a lot of the documentation is right here in our online article as well. You can click into any one of these, and let me jump into this one as an example. So the ability to include the phone number on the standard 1099 form. So that's not really something I really need to demonstrate. So I'll just click into here and show that now on our standard 1099 form, the customer's phone number is now included along with the name and address. So this shows that we have the phone number available if you want to design it and put it on your 1099 form, but our standard 1099 form, we've automatically went ahead and put the phone number on the standard form. But if you're in forms design, you can grab the phone number and drag it over and place it on right underneath the address. Or the text space, this is an example of our graphic forms design where you can put the phone number under the address, or our text-based 1099 form design, where you can choose the phone number and specify what row or what column you want to print the phone number on the text base. So it's handled, phone number is handled for text-based or graphic forms. The other enhancement in accounts payable has to do with 1099 electronic reporting. Show that one for a second. So if I go into account processing, 1099 electronic, oops, yeah, here we go. We have a new question, check for foreign addresses. What this means is that on the 1099 electronic reporting, the file that gets generated to submit for 1099, there's a check inside the file for each individual 1099 to say yes or no, is this a foreign address? And we put a new question here that if you want the system to automatically determine if you want to check that box to say that it's a foreign address. We don't automatically do it. because in name address, we have a field. Let me go to name address. In name address, the information that we use to determine if it's a foreign address is the country. So if the country is blank, then it's not a foreign address. If the country is US or USA or United States, then it's not a foreign address. So US, U.S.A, or United States, or blank, those would not be foreign addresses. But if it's anything but that, then it would be considered to be a foreign address, and it would mark it as a foreign address in your 1099. Now, the reason we made it be a question whether or not you wanted to do that, we do know that we have some customers who use this country field for other information besides country. It might just be another extension of their address. So if you're using this country field for anything else besides the actual country, then you probably want to say, no, don't check for a foreign address when you're creating a 1099 electronic file. But if you are using this country for the actual country identification, then you can say yes and mark in the 1099 file that if it's a foreign address or not. Okay, I go back to the list and I go to accounts receivable. First one shows ability for the name ID on bookings to be the ship to. So you can create bookings now for the ship to, or you can still create them for the bill to. It's up to you. When you're creating bookings, you can set the system up so that the bill to can apply to the ship to's booking. And again, this is an optional choice of a setup. So the first thing is a new setup option in accounts receivable. I go to the screen, the second screen of the setup information. I go to the third screen of the setup information. There's a new question on the third screen of setup, and it's by default, it's set to no, which is your current functionality. So the question is, apply invoices to bookings based on ship to name ID, yes or no? So what it's always done in the past is this yes up here, apply invoice to bookings based on the bill to name ID. It will always do that. That's a yes. But you can also optionally, when you come in here, it'll be set to a no. But if you want to start using bookings so that the individual splits of an invoice can apply to the ship to's bookings, then you can set this to a yes. And it allows you to write one booking for the ship to and have all the bill to's apply to that same booking. So I've set this to a yes, and I'll show you how that works. So in accounts receivable, I have bookings set up. Let's go show an example. So if I look at Tom Robinson, I have a booking set up here for 998 pounds of zinc oxide. That's not been applied to any invoice yet. And if I look at, that was Tom Robinson. If I look at Tim Robinson, he doesn't have any bookings set up. And I've got a 50-50 split set up for Tom and Tim. So if I go to do an invoice, and then on the ship to, I specify Tom Robinson, and I'll show you the split setup. So there's a 50-50 split set up for Tom Robinson, Tim Robinson. So I'm going to do an invoice for zinc oxide and say 100 pounds. You notice the price of 0.5790 per pound. And then finish the invoice. And the first split is 50%, 50 pounds for Tom Robinson, and the bookings buttons is automatically highlighted. And this is the ship to and the bill to. In this case, the bill to and the ship to is the same person. And I'll go ahead and find that booking and change my price from 0.579 to half a cent. And continue and finish the invoice for Tom. And then it'll go to Tim Robinson. And again, I can look for bookings and it'll find that same booking. There's booking number 1. And again, it's changing his price from 0.579 to 0.5. And And so both Tom and Tim Robinson has applied to that same booking. Okay. The other enhancement has to do with bookings as well. And I'll just talk through this one without demonstrating this one, but basically it allows you to actually put in negative prices on your bookings. And the reason we added this is typically when you have a booking, you, in that example I just gave, you had a discounted price. So it was a half a cent instead of 0.579. But we have some customers who would like to actually show it on the booking that they're getting an additional line as a discount and keep the original price the same. So here's an example now that you can create a booking where the original product, the actual product itself, is a price of 75 cents. And instead of changing that to the booking price of 65 cents, you can put an additional line as a service item and say 100 quantity of this service item for negative 10 cents to show that they're getting a discount. So the end result would be that a booking form will print out that shows the 75 cents, $75 minus $10 to be, you know, at $65, as opposed to showing it as just one line. And you could also send the two different products. If they're in different product categories, you can send the results to different ledger accounts as well. And so then when you go to do the invoice, you can include both products, the penny nails product and the discount product on the invoice. And each one of the line items will apply to this invoice, apply to this booking. So the enhancement here, sorry, I accidentally clicked on that. The enhancement is that the negative line item is the one that can now be applied to an invoice. So before 21.1, you were not able to enter a negative price. And if there were any negative prices, the invoicing would not apply to them. But now starting with 21.1, the line item on the booking can actually be a negative price. And it will show up on the booking form as well. Okay. All right, if I go to Aggregate, we have a couple enhancements there as well. It all has to do with farm and field imports. All three of these enhancements have to do with farm and field imports. So we now have an import that you can create a file in a standard fixed length file or a comma delimited CSV file format. We've had farm and field imports before where you can post them through our web service, but now we're making it easier so you can actually create a farm and field import in Excel and save it as a CSV and then import them into Aggregate. And whenever we do an import, we usually add an export that matches it as well. So we have a farm and field export too. So let me go show you that. So in Aggregate, we have a new menu option here for advanced reports. This menu option wasn't available before. And that menu option is for the export. We have a standard report now to export farms and export fields in the standard format where you can turn around and import them. So you could export the farms and fields, change some information, and then turn around and re-import it back in. Or you can create the farm and field import from another system and bring it into AGRIS. And if I went to maintenance, file layouts for imports, Aggregate is included on the list. And you can see what the format is for the import. So there would be, if this was in Excel, you'd have across the top columns A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it would be a client code, farm name, and the reporting area, unit of measure, and that amount of information that can be imported. So you create a file in that format, and you can import that through the normal reports import procedures, and you can pull those farms and fields into the system. The other enhancement related to that is this last one on the when you're importing farms and fields, if the farm or the field name already exists, it will update that same one. Prior to 21.1, when we were posting farms and fields through the web service and you provided the same name, it would actually, it would allow you to have multiple farms with the same name under a client and have multiple fields with the same name under that farm. But now the import will prevent that. And if you haven't, typically we would match on the farm and field code itself, but now we're matching on the farm field code and the farm and field name to make sure you don't have duplicate names. So those are the enhancements for AGRIS. There's an enhancement in our CFT communications that I want to talk about at the end, and I'll come back to that. If I go to inventory, we have a couple enhancements in here. The first one I'll just show on this screen. Again, it's related to Aggregate, because if you're doing an invoice for Aggregate and you have multiple splits set up in Aggregate based on farm field and based on the products and farm fields in Aggregate, when you go to do the invoice, the system will automatically pull in those splits when you do the invoice. The enhancement here is a warning that shows on this split screen. So if I'm doing an Aggregate invoice, and Aggregate and the invoice has automatically pulled in all the splits for this invoice, and you might have multiple different splits based on the line item of the invoice. So one product, one farm field might have a certain amount of splits, and a different product, different farm field might have different splits. The system does accommodate that and allow that to happen. But then if you come in and you click on the splits button to override the splits for this invoice, this warning has been added, because what you're doing when you hit that splits button to override the splits for the invoice, you're overriding the splits for the entire invoice. So if Aggregate is already pulled in and has it set up that you have different splits per line item, and you're going to come in here to override the splits, it'll tell you that all the line items will be replaced by whatever you're entering on this screen. Because this screen is for the overall invoice, no matter what line item. And if you've already got line items that are different, then you may not want to replace those. Instead, you might want to go to the specific line items, because splits can be handled on the overall invoice, or on each line item of an invoice, you can change the splits. So if you change it here, it'll let you know that you're changing it for all the line items. And if you want to do it for one line item, then you want to do it on this screen, you would choose a line item and change the splits. The other enhancement has to do with stock manufacturing. I can show that right here as well. When you're doing, if you're using lot numbered items and you're doing stock manufacturing, we have an enhancement here that you can do a stock manufacturing, creating a new lot, and at the same time make it inactive. So you're doing a manufacturing process to create a new lot, and it's not ready to be sold yet until you go into inventory item maintenance and mark that lot number as active. So this screen here is showing that we're in the manufacturing process, and we're manufacturing an item that has lot numbers associated. And so the screen comes up to allow you to enter your new lot number, or let the system automatically create the next lot number. But then there's an active status on the screen. And by default, that active status is yes. You want it to be active, and you want to search for all your active lots. But if you change that to no, and then you create a new lot for this manufacturing process, then that lot is still not active. And so if you went straight from manufacturing and someone went into invoicing to invoice out, or delivery ticket to ship out some of that product, it won't automatically be on the list of lots to be shipped until you go back into inventory item maintenance and mark that lot as active again. So by default, the system's going to act the same way as it did before, unless you manually change this to be a no when you're doing the manufacturing process. I go to Ledger. We have a new report in the Ledger system. I'll go show that. Oops, I've got all my security turned off for that user. You select a different data set. Okay, for journal entry reports, print standard reports, I've got some favorites turned on. So let me go to all reports and all spreadsheets. We have the new report is this Ledger trial balance spreadsheet. So this trial balance spreadsheet is a new report that mimics the trial balance report. So the trial balance report and the trial balance spreadsheet has the same columns. And so it's just another standard report that you could take and make a user-defined report and change the columns and have it the same report as a report or the same report as a spreadsheet. Go back to my other data set. And the next package is the patronage system. This is the same as what we talked about payable, that the 1099s can handle the foreign addresses. So it's the same conversation as the accounts payable foreign addresses. There's an optional yes or no. Do you want the output electronic file to consider and check the box for whether it's a foreign address? This next one for the 1099 PATR is for box number 8. Based on all the information that we have about box number 8, is that it should be a total of boxes numbers 1, 2, 3, and 5. So now for the 1099s and patronage, whatever's in box 1, 2, 3, and 5 now is added up and is included in box number 8. That shows that here on this documentation. The other enhancement is the pass-through credits. If you're using the imports for the pass-through credits at the end of the year, prior to 21.1, if you have some customers that you've made inactive throughout the year, and then you're wanting to import the pass-through credit information, as you do possibly once a year at the end of the year, prior to 21.1, it would reject the ones that were inactive. But now you would have to go mark those customers as active temporarily, do the import, and then go make them inactive again. But now you can go ahead and do the pass-through credit imports even if the customer is inactive. So you don't have to go edit those and edit them back each year. I go to the payroll system. There's some similar enhancements there as well. We have an enhancement for COVID-19 sick pay and family leave. So for individual deductions, I'll show this in these examples here. Actually, I can show that in here. I go to the payroll setup and store my deduction codes. If you have any employees that have taken time off and paid time off due to COVID, whether they were sick themselves or they were to care for somebody else, that can be reported on the W-2 form. tax exempt deductions. So you would set that up as an additional deduction and say, yes, it's exempt from, I deduct it before calculating FICA tax and whether or not it's tax exempt. So I've got this set up that the sick care and the sick pay and the sick care pay are both tax exempt, and they show up as a code 99 on the W-2. And the way I've got this set up is that I've got 3 deductions. These 2 will deduct those off of the paycheck, and then this deduction will actually put it back on the paycheck so that the actual paycheck is the same, but you've got some of it is tax exempt. And so that's the way you can set up the system so that a deduction, these 3 deductions, if they have 1 or 2 of them. So if they have some paid time off due to COVID sick, you can have that on their paycheck of how much they got paid for that. And then the opposite would be automatically paid back. So let me show you how that works here on this documentation. So you can see all that in this documentation, how you would set that up. And then their year-to-date information will show there's an example of an employee that had over $3,755 of COVID pay. And then so we subtracted that from his pay, but then it added it back in. And then the reason for that is that these 2 deductions could then be shown on the W-2 as a tax exempt. Okay. The next one is let me go in and explain this one in payroll. This enhancement has to do with this wage reduction and additional withholding. Prior to 21, so what this field is that you can add or subtract from the employee's wages prior to calculating taxes. And this column is for to add and subtract to his actual tax amount. So this is the wage reduction prior to calculating federal and state income taxes, and this is afterward. What the enhancement is for this is that this field here used to only subtract from his wages, but now we put a little indication that it could be a plus or a minus. So you could actually increase his taxable income. So it's a wage reduction as far as this field. So if I put in $80, then it's going to reduce his taxable income by $80. But now you can put in a negative 80 and it'll actually increase. So he'll have more taxable income. And then the same way over here, this is a withholding amount. So if I put in $80 here, after it calculates the taxes, then it'll reduce it by $80. But if I want to increase it and withhold more, let me say that correctly. It's going to withhold $80 more. But if I put negative 80 in here, it's going to withhold $80 less because you're actually withholding negative 80. So both of these fields can now handle a positive or a negative. That's the same. That's the one I was just describing. That's the one I was just describing. So let me see, what's the difference between these two? Entry fields added support. So basically these two enhancements go together. One is that you can set it up to handle positive and negative. The other one is that when it actually goes to do the salary adjustment, it takes care of that and does the actual positive and negative. The last one I want to talk about is in our communications module. And first of all, So our communications module is for our communications to other systems. We added a new one so that we can have integration to the Comdata Smart Solutions point of sale system that very similar for fuel integrations, similar to EEE or the other fuel and point of sale integrations that we have. That's available if you want to find out more information about that. What I really want to show here is that we have an integration with we have an integration with our RJ O'Brien's Harvest Hedge system for the commodity system. I talked about this last week, but it's not specifically, this topic is not specifically centered on the RJO Harvest integration. What we have now is now in the AGRIS system, what we did it for this purpose of this RJO Harvest Hedge integration, but the same concept can be used anyway in any place else in the system. And the concept is if any of you have used this option to do email of reports, you can set up your system to email reports. And typically those would be emailed to people, employees within the company. So we have an option to email forms, which is typically emailing your contracts and invoice forms and AR statement forms out to your customers. But the emailing of reports are typically intended to be emailing of reports to your employees internally. And so we've already, none of this is new to 21.1, but you can set up your reports to automatically be emailed. And you can set that up on a timer. You can set that up as a report stream within AGRIS, or you can set it up as a Windows task scheduler to email these reports on any amount of timing basis. And so you can set up any number of internal employees to receive this report. And this specific report example is a report to show any rejections. This example of this report for RJO is a report to show if there's any rejections that happen when the RJO Harvest Hedge system is posting contracts into AGRIS. So if they're posting a contract and maybe the location code is incorrect, or a customer is not active in the AGRIS system, or any reasons that you want to import or post transactions and they'd be rejected for whatever reason. So this is set up so that the employees will get a report, whoever is monitoring or managing this process, they'll get an email of the report however often you've set it up. And now to get to the enhancement for 21.1. The enhancement for 21.1 is that you can now set up a report, and this probably takes a little bit of services work to work with us depending on what you're wanting us to do. But throughout the entire AGRIS system, we can create a report now and have it send you an email only if a certain condition happens on that report. So prior to 21.1, if you have this set up to get a report every hour, every employee who's set up to get that report will get that report every hour. And then you have to open the report and look at it to see if there's any issues. But now with 21.1, we can go into the design of that report and say, if there's nothing to be reported, don't send the email. So what that means is now you don't have to wait for every hour. You can now set up a report to do it that way. And you can set up the timer to say, run it every 10 minutes, run it every 5 minutes, run it however often you want to run it. But if there's nothing to communicate to the employees, they won't get an email. So if you're running it every 10, 15 minutes, and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's something that needs to be reported, then that's when you'll get an email. And so the enhancement is send the email only when it needs to be sent. Don't send it every time we run the report. So this is important to understand, because now you can take that and think about that throughout the entire system. If there's any place in the system when you want to communicate, if you want an exception report of any type, where you want to be communicated right away whenever there's a situation. So if inventory goes down to a certain level, or orders have been greater than the amount on hand, or your hedge position that was over a certain level, or even if you have a situation where maybe a contract is out of balance or something like that, the reports aren't automatically there, but any of these reports can be created so that you can set it up to create and send an email when a certain condition happens, and get that email only when that situation exists. So if you think of any of those, please reach out to Tracy Curtis or others on a support team and give your ideas of a type of exception reports that you'd like to see. And Travis, I think that's the end of the demo. If there's any questions.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. That was great. I'll go ahead. I don't see anything in the QA box for sure, or definitely. So let me, I'll unmute everybody here on this side. So if there are any questions, you're all unmuted at this point, so it's going to get a little noisy. But by all means, we've got about 10 minutes left, honestly, before the top of the hour. So just shout them out, and we'll see what we can do to answer them.
Maybe I missed it, Dan. This is Barb from Maplehurst. What can you give me an example of an exception report that you guys have created with that?
Well, the only one we've created so far is this one for RJO harvest hedge integrations, and I'll show you an example of what it would look like. So if I go print this recap. And so let me just show real quick. So on this report, there's a section that says, here's all the contracts that are coming from Harvest Hedge to AGRIS. And one of them is that it's trying to update an existing contract where it doesn't even exist in AGRIS, or it's saying a location code not found. So there's three different things of transactions that are being attempted to be passed into AGRIS, and so if any of those conditions happen, then an email will be sent out to whoever signed up for this email. But if you take that same concept to anything, and so that's the only standard report that we have today that will do that. But the idea is the AGRIS system is now set up so without receiving a new version of AGRIS, we can do a custom report for you and utilize that same feature. So
gotcha.
If you have
like for instance, we use a DTM portal integration all the time. So if there's some rejection on a contract, that can then alert me rather than finding out halfway through the day or at the end of the day, I could know right away.
Yes, so we'd have to evaluate each one of these examples and see how feasible that would be. If it's something that's actually in the database, yes.
Okay.
So if we have information that's in the AGRIS database that we can look for and detect and send a report only if that situation occurs, then with 21.1, you don't need a new enhancement to the system. You do a custom report to do that.
Okay. All right. I'll have to think about that. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
So any other questions? Anybody from the floor? We did have somewhat of a related question from Michelle, and I think regarding the exception, maybe that was already answered, but we'll go ahead and do this. So as far as the exception report, would we be able to create one for when a contract is canceled or certain fields were changed on a contract?
A good example of that would be if it's in the hedge audit reports, yes. So again, the key is if it's information that's available in the database. So certain fields that you change on a contract does create a hedge audit entry. If you change the price, change the futures month, change the basis, things like that, there's a set number of fields that are tracked and audited. And sure, if you have any of those, you can create a custom advanced report that monitors the hedge audit information and can send out a report when that happens.
This is Barb again from Maplehurst. A question on the inventory side related to exceptions. If we're shipping product and when a customer gets over their credit limit, is that something that can be an exception report as well? based on delivery tickets, not necessarily invoices? Or both, I guess.
When they get over their credit
Yeah,
limit?
or when they're reaching their credit limit, like let's say we want to know when they get within so many dollars of what their credit limit is, we get an alert. Because that can happen so fast during season.
Yes. So yes, that's a good example. So we can create, and all of these are examples of where we would need to create an advanced report. All right, so meaning that a user-defined or a custom report that we create for you, in this example, we create a report of all customers that are within X% of their credit limit.
Yes.
And send that out when it happens.
Yeah, good.
And then you can run the report how often as you want. So like I said, you could run it in the background, it could be running every half hour, every hour. And if there's nothing to report, it won't send the email.
Good. Okay, thank you.
And you said that would include delivery tickets?
Yes, it could include delivery tickets, yes. Because if you went to an example of that, if you went to an individual customer, it doesn't actually have to monitor delivery tickets. What we do in that example is like account balance inquiry. We know it's in the database. We know that information. So your balance analysis knows the credit available. So it knows how much the account balance is, how many dollars of open delivery tickets, and to know what his credit availability is. So we know what the credit limit is, what the credit available is, and you can set up the report to say whatever X%. If he gets over this 95% or 99% or whatever, then you can have them included on the report. But again, this is a custom report in this example. You're probably working with Tracy Curtis to do a services project to create the first one. And if we create some good ones like that, we may turn them in to be standard reports.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I've answered a couple here in the chat that I could answer, so there's nothing pending here. Anybody else have any questions? We're right at the top of the hour. Okay. All right, so yeah, we'll close this down. Seeing no questions, and you can of course interrupt me as I'm speaking. But this just as a reminder, this is being recorded, and we will look for an email to everybody who's registered. So whether if you registered for this, and even those that were registered and weren't able to attend, this email or this link, sorry, to the recording will be emailed out here probably within the next 3 to 4 days. So we'll look towards the end of the week. Keep an eye on your email, and then you can review this as needed. And again, if you have any questions, by all means, reach out to us. Support number is probably still the best, and or Tracy Curtis or myself directly. We can see what we can round up for you. And again, thank you for joining us today, and we'll do this again soon. Appreciate it. Have a great afternoon. Thanks, Dan.
This is Kim.
You're welcome.